Today's guest is Cody West, the chief strategist and founder of Assisted Reach, a business intelligence partner for SEO. Cody enjoys building data-driven tools and automations to help his clients increase traffic and ultimately conversions. Thank you for joining me today, Cody.
Thank you for having me, John. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to actually have you on the show because for you, it's all about now you are building something, right? To assist all the people that are in this industry, but ultimately people that are more interested in profitability, conversion rate, things that really truly matter, right? So before we get into what you're doing today, can you share with some of the audience members like how you got to where you are? Like go back to growing up to maybe even university and the things before you got into where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Southern California. I was a beach kid growing up, so I loved surfing and skating and pretty much any board sport. And then I went to Arizona State for college. And I guess in high school, I was super into computers all growing up. I was a gamer, and I decided to take an AP computer science class in high school, and I absolutely did not like it at all. They were teaching us Java. I did not see the connections at all, so ended up dropping the class in high school and then pursuing a business degree in college. So I ended up graduating with a degree in economics and supply chain management. And my first job out of school was in data analytics. And there's kind of a tie there between the economics degree and data. And so, yeah, I started down that path, that career path. And a few months in, I was like, man, I need to figure out how a lot of these people I'm hearing about 4-hour work week, how they're making money online. I think this is a very quintessential story when you hear about someone getting into SEO. But that's exactly how I got into it. I started building affiliate sites on nights and weekends. And that was kind of that. I think about a year in, I started a Christmas light installation company. We ended up driving 400, 500 leads to the site over a 4-month period. And it was all through SEO and Google ads. So that kind of got me hooked on the marketing side of things. And I just kind of kept pushing down that path. And that's kind of where I am today. So I started a company called Assisted Reach. We're a business intelligence focused SEO and content marketing agency. And we really blend the data analytics skill set that I had built early in my career with the SEO skill set to try and help businesses make smarter, better, search-driven decisions.
That's amazing, man. So tell me a little bit about like, you mentioned you love board sports and you love surfing and you grew up in the West Coast, right? So moving away from school, was that a challenge? Like, because there was no beach in Arizona, like what drove you to leave what you were so accustomed to venture off to a new area?
Yeah, it was, well, I guess I glazed over. So I played lacrosse in high school, and I tried to, I wanted to play lacrosse in college. So ASU, they had a pretty good team. So they had recruited me to go play. I visited the school. I was like, yeah, it's 6 hours from home, pretty close to home, and sounds like a fun school to go to. So that's kind of how I ended up at ASU. I think like a couple months into it, I realized I was nowhere near water, and that was kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. You know, there's still a ton of fun stuff to do in Arizona. So I definitely made it work.
That's awesome, man. Well, that really bodes well as an entrepreneur because then I look at like sports as a very good foundation to like habits, right? And so then I look back and maybe ask you, like growing up, did you ever think of wanting to build your own company? Like what were you always wanting to do as a ideal career or ideal place in your life?
Yeah, it's funny. Like recently, I've talked to my parents about this, and I asked them straight up. I was like, "Hey, like, did you see me starting companies when I was a kid? Was that something that you kind of predicted?" And my parents were like, "Absolutely. Like, you were always doing these little things." And then when I started thinking about it, it made perfect sense. So I guess like the stereotypical like lemonade stand. I was actually always doing lemonade stands as a kid. I was super into collecting Pokemon cards, and what I would do is like resell the Pokemon cards to my friends for profit. I did a ton of work for my grandpa. There was a lot of manual labor, like chopping down trees and pruning bushes and stuff like that. But I was apparently just always really interested in ways I could make money and do things kind of on my own terms. So I think as a kid, yeah, I definitely showed signs of being an entrepreneur. And I think in high school, it was definitely something going through my head. Like I definitely want to own my own business one day. In college, absolutely. And I had even started a couple companies in college, very small, like little things. But as I look back and hear my parents and people who knew me close, they're like, yeah, we definitely saw it in you.
That's amazing, because self-reflection of like what actually occurred and all the little habits that you incurred, right? It
Mm-hmm.
all turns out to be like why people actually want to do this, right? And it's great to
Mm-hmm.
hear, because you not knowing, actually your parents knew, right? And it was like, wow, now you look back and you're like, it's true why I did that. Like myself, I worked tons of jobs. I was a newspaper boy and doing all these little things, right? But I didn't know that I wanted to be a business owner until I actually started it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
but I had the same habits. I had the same willpower and work ethic and everything else, right? That true
Yeah.
entrepreneurs need to have to be ultimately successful. So it's great to hear. Growing up, was there anyone that really inspired you or really pushed you, motivated you to become who you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. My great grandpa, I call him Pop, he's actually my grandpa, not great grandpa. But yeah, so he was definitely my biggest influence. He extremely hardworking guy, extremely extremely safe and risky in business, but safe with his own financials. And he instilled, I think, a lot of those financial principles in me, especially because I was over at his house every single weekend working for money, you know? So yeah, he was definitely my biggest influence. He was a custom furniture designer.
Mm.
So he would do offices for like Blizzard and like Billabong. He would design the custom workstations and that sort of thing. So yeah, I learned a ton from him, and to this day, he's still my greatest influence by far.
That's amazing. Because I look at and hear and read about like side hustles and work ethic and just grinding it out. It's true though, right? Like not knowing when you were young, doing all these fundamental things that really you need as a core to be a successful entrepreneur, right? It's now
Hmm.
ingrained in you. Like now you don't really take it for granted because you just have to do it, right? And you've already done it by habit for years and years, right? So now it's so much easier to do than someone that wants to be an entrepreneur all of a sudden that have never really been practicing it for 20 years, right?
Right. Yeah. You had like alluded to this a little bit before about sports being kind of a good primer. And I totally think that if you played sports growing up, it's almost like kind of an entrepreneurial hack. And the reason is, as an entrepreneur, you have to have really good balance in your life. And I think sports instills like the physical health aspect of things and also discipline. But I think it's much harder to get into a routine of taking care of your health physically as an adult versus if you started playing sports as a kid and you played them all growing up. I think it's a little bit easier to build those physical health habits, which I mean keep you sane and productive in your entrepreneurial ventures.
Yeah, and people kind of they forget, or they might like forget about the importance of like nutrition and habits, right? And lifestyle gets in the way. Like when you have children, when you have family, you try to do everything, but take care of yourself, right? And that's the most important
Hmm.
thing. If you forget about taking care of yourself, you have no energy, no time. Your health is gonna be like poor, and you lose focus and all this other stuff, sleep. So that definitely is, very inspiring to hear. Like, sports is very important. In terms of career, can you just walk me through? Like, I know you studied and did the analytics and whatnot in terms of background. How did you land your first job, and what did you learn from it before you started getting into the SEO space?
Yeah, I got super lucky with the company I got a job with out of college. I was originally going to do a master's degree, and so I got a scholarship to do the master's and everything. So I was just looking for internships to do my senior year, and that senior summer before the master's degree started. And I ended up getting this analytics internship. And during the internship, absolutely loved what I was doing. It was a really cool program because you spent 2 weeks in each department of the company doing analytics. So 1 week in finance, 1 week in marketing, 1 week in sales, 1 week in like risk, that sort of thing. And then at the end of the internship, that company had offered me a job. So the question, they were like, you can either do your master's and kind of work here part-time, or you can start full-time. And at that point I'd kind of seen, I don't know, just like what I'd gotten out of school. I don't think was what I had hoped to get out in terms of learning. And what I had learned from this 8-week internship was incredible. Like I was like, this is the most I've ever learned in my entire life, in such a short period of time. So instead of doing the master's degree, I decided to do the full-time career path there. And so I ended up working there for about 4 years, just in data and analytics, but I'd started my career there in risk, doing like quantitative analytics. And then I think maybe like 6 months to a year after I had really dug into SEO and marketing, I was like, hey, I'm really into this SEO and marketing stuff. Is there a spot on the marketing analytics team that I can move over? And I ended up moving over there, and then ended up running the SEO strategy about a year later for that company.
That's amazing, man. So I know analytics is so popular today, right? Like in terms of courses, and it's actually a really popular course for a lot of universities today. Mm-hmm. But back in the day when you did it, how did you get into that, right? Like, because end of the day, that was such a niche. And did you already suspect it being a very popular, in-demand kind of industry? Or how did you go about deciding to choose that career path?
No, it was funny. That it was way before there was like these massive data science communities on the internet, and courses, and there wasn't even a degree. The business analytics master's that I was going to do was that was like, I would be the first like graduating class if I would have done that. So it was like brand new. Yeah. So the reason I kind of got into it is I took a linear regression economics class, and we're using Excel and doing just like some basic regression stuff. And it was the first time that I kind of like applied what I was learning in school, and I could see how it was used in the real world, And there was another mathematical economics class that I took, where it was sort of the same thing. And I remember I was talking to a professor about just like, hey, what do I do now that I have these 2 degrees? And I was kind of explaining to him like what I was interested in. I told him I liked these 2 classes, and he was just like, hey, you should go into a career as like a business analyst. So I did some Googling, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a business analyst. So that's really how I did it.
That's awesome, man. I love it hearing like, you didn't really have a plan, right? You basically just winged it. And this is exactly what entrepreneurs do, right? Like they find quick ways to like make things happen without like waiting for things to happen, right? So I love that story that you're telling me. So tell me a little bit about like the change from, that business analyst role to then the SEO. Why did you want to migrate over to that and that world that presented itself?
Yeah, I think it was one of Cal Newport's books that I'd read. It was either Deep Work or So Good They Can't Ignore You. But he talks about like what makes a fulfilling career. I'm pretty sure it was So Good They Can't Ignore You. And one of those factors was autonomy, and autonomy with your time. And that was something that I wasn't getting in the corporate world. And it's very rare, I think, for people to get that in the corporate world. And so I think that was one of the main drivers, is just being in control of my time. So if I wanted to start working 2 hours later than normal, I'd have the ability to do that. Or if I wanted to get into work really early and knock out a bunch of stuff and then leave, I'd be able to do that too. So I'm a huge believer that if you pay attention to your body and you make the right like health choices, then your body kind of tells you what to do. And I think like the stereotypical 9 to 5 job doesn't really abide by that. That I think that was like one of the big reasons for learning SEO, because I knew the people who knew SEO had extreme autonomy over their time. And so that's kind of where it started. And then obviously if it was something that I didn't connect with or click with, I would have dropped it really quickly. But as I dug into it, I really quickly saw the ties between analytics and SEO and how powerful SEO could be, and really just dug in and loved it. That's kind of how all that happened.
That's amazing, because I think I kind of did it differently than you, because for me, I chose a path of sales, right? Which also gives you a lot of autonomy as long as you hit your quotas, right? So for me, that's the career choice I started right after university. And then I pivoted to SEO, knowing that I worked at Yellow Pages. So it was a really easy transition for me, because I already had relationships with business owners. So that's amazing to hear about like how things pivoted for you. So tell us, like, did you have to like obtain any coaches or mentors along the way? Because it seems like you read a lot and you already have your grandpa in terms of like helping you as a mentor, but were there other people that were inspirational to where, to get you to where you are today as a business owner, entrepreneur now?
Absolutely. I think that was probably the best thing that I did over the course of the last 5 years or so is any money that I would make via entrepreneurial efforts, I would reinvest that back usually into myself. Before I had a business. Now it's usually more, now it's maybe like a 50-50 split, myself and the business. But yeah, so I have a business coach currently, and I've taken tons of courses that I've purchased. And yeah, my current business coach, I've told him this before, like he has been the best investment I have ever made in my business. And I think one of the reasons is like a network. Two, it's kind of been there, done that, So like if I come to him with a problem that I'm seeing, and he's already seen it 5 times over, and he's like, hey, I'm going to save you the headache. This is what you should do, and here's why. Those types of things, I think, are just it saves you an exponential amount of time. So yeah, amazing investment.
That's amazing to hear, because a lot of people never invest in themselves, right? And they will try to grind it out. And I'm fortunate also to have worked with tons of business owners that have kind of done it, gone through it. So I pick their brains, as well as like old colleagues that are in their 60s, 50s and 60s that have gone through what I've been trying to get to. Right? So really just asking the right questions, surrounding yourself with like-minded people, but also people that want to support you along the way is very important. So that's great to hear. So in terms of like some of the challenges that you faced over the years, in terms of your career and business, can you think of some that you would like to share, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. This one's a little personal. So after graduating college, I had gotten some like pretty debilitating anxiety. It was the first time I had ever experienced anything like that in my life. And I think a lot of it was due to like the big, hey, you're in this structured environment, K through college, and we're going to tell you exactly what to do and when to do it. And then once you graduate, you're kind of on your own, and so yeah, it was very challenging through this time. Like it was when I had the internship and when I had kind of first gotten hired. So everything's really new for me. And yeah, it was one of those things where I kind of had to take a step back and look at like, hey, what is causing this? A lot of it was just not good balance in life. Being a workaholic, working way too hard, not watching my diet, not watching my sleep, things like that. And overcoming it was really just, hey, every day put one foot in front of the other, and just keep doing what you know is right. Keep learning, and do your best. And I think like, especially with anxiety, that's one of those things where if you don't do what you want to do, it actually makes the anxiety worse. So even if you're struggling throughout the day, as long as you do what it is that, in my case, it was going to the internship and going to work, regardless of how I felt. That was how I got through it. And yeah, over the course, it was probably like a 1.5 year period going through this. But came out the other side, much better person, much more balanced. So I look back on it, and I'm super thankful that I went through a time like that.
Well, thanks for sharing that, because end of the day, us entrepreneurs, we go through a lot that either in personal standpoint or business standpoint, it's difficult for a lot of people to overcome, right? But we find a way to kind of, plug away and don't let it really impact our lives, right? And it's great that you're sharing this because, people struggle in terms of like their first career, their job, their personal relationships, their whatever it may be, family, right? And what do you have to do? It's slowly. People want fixes right away, hacks, right? But if you look at this journey of a life of say 80 years or 100 years, if you slowly make changes to your habits, your lifestyle choices, just slow increments, it's going to overall improve every aspect of your life, from health to relationships, to community, to business, to work, to friends, family, everything, right? So don't go at it all hard right away. Just slow and steady always wins the race, right? It's great to hear that.
Yeah, 100% agree. Especially with things like anxiety, like there's no overnight fix. It's long and arduous, but if you do the right things, you'll get through it. 100%.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're sharing this, because even myself personally, I look back and I'm like, look, I could have easily went through the wrong path, right? Growing up, I saw a lot going on. Like I didn't grow up in a well-to-do neighborhood. It was more government housing, so I saw a lot, and I could have easily got in with the wrong group of people. And I've seen a lot of things that a lot of people have never seen before. And I'm glad that my parents or my peers, my family really pushed me to the right direction, right? Getting an education, formal education, hanging out with the right people, doing homework when I should, I see all my friends doing all the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's like all that stuff. It's like, it sucks when you're a kid. You're like, wow, you're rebellious. You're like, why am I, stuck at home doing all this? But end of the day, they're looking out for the best interest for yourself, right? So
yeah, totally agree.
So in terms of advice, I know that now you're starting your own business. What have you learned so far? Like, being an entrepreneur like myself, I still make mistakes daily, right? But I own up to it and I'm fine with it. As long as everyone sees I'm trying to do good, right? Like, what have you kind of learned, or is there any advice pieces that you can share with the audience members?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just like a great framework for any business is people, profit, or people, process equals profit, and in that order. So having good people, then having good process, and that's how you become a profitable company. Someone like me who's very technical and loves writing automations and coding and that sort of thing, I had a much heavier focus on the process piece, but you can't run process without good people. So I think that was a big learning lesson for me, is making sure that I have a very built out and dynamic interview process, and I'm not just hiring people to hire them. I'm hiring them for a very specific thing and that they are already good at, and then I'm giving them a process that's really good too. So it's a great person and then a great process, and then things that end up working out really, really well. It's when one of the two, when you skimp on one of the two, is typically when there's red flags and things that come up that aren't optimal.
So how long did it take you to refine that? Because, starting off to where you're at today, how did you, expedite it so that the mistakes don't happen frequently? And how did you turn it around to then figure it out?
Yeah. So for me, Assisted Reach has been around for about 3 years now. Okay. And I hired a really, really good project manager who has all those interviewing skills and is really good at the things that I'm not good at.
Yeah.
So once I had hired her, things completely changed. So really for me, it was like, hey, I need to hire someone and be really good at hiring this person to do this piece that I know is super important, but that I don't have a ton of passion for, and I wouldn't say I'm the best at, which is like the hiring, interviewing, managing side of things. So after hiring her, it allowed me to focus on what I'm good at, which is the technical and the process pieces. So I would say, yeah, really the last year is when it's turned around a lot, and we've had a ton of growth.
That's amazing. And I hear this a lot, even myself, like I should have passed on a lot of responsibility and hired the right people earlier days. But as you evolve and grow, you're like, wow, that was a great hire because it relieved my stress on things that I hated doing. And that's what really pushes me to the brink, right? Because you restless sleeps, stressing about stuff that are like irrelevant in the end of the day. And you're not focused on doing things that you're most productive at, right? And you actually enjoy doing. So hiring the right people to save you time, yes, it'll cost you a little bit, but you're better off doing what you love to grow the company and work on the business as opposed to in the business on some of the stuff like accounting, bookkeeping, sales, operation, stuff that you're not good at, right? And you didn't go to school to do it. Once you figure that out sooner, the easier it is for you to grow and scale your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm still learning that piece, but I love to hear it from other entrepreneurs because when they figure it out, they're like, wow, I should have done that earlier, right? Which I still always think of all the time, right? I could have saved 2-3 years of my life. But in hindsight, it's like a learning curve, right? Without doing it yourself, you don't know to really understand the and be grateful of what you now know, right?
Right. Yeah, it's like this year, once I saw it work, something clicked. And then I'm just like, all right, someone, I need to hire someone for this. I need to hire someone for this. You know, it's become like this hiring frenzy because I see the value in it, you know, when before it's like, I really want to hold the reins tight. This is, you know, as an entrepreneur, it's your baby, you know. But
Exactly.
what you realize is like you develop your kid into a better human if you delegate more rather than trying to do it all yourself.
And then you're also giving more roles for employees and you see them grow. And that's what a true leader actually is, right? Watching them become better people, that they train others, right? And they become more passionate in doing what they love. So it's great to see as an entrepreneur that other people instills the same core values as you do, right? In all your employees. So it's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So running a business over the last couple of years, how has technology really played a role in your day-to-day activities? Because as you know, we live in this, digital age, right? And yes, you're a, coder, programmer. What have you seen over the last years, and how has it really helped you grow your company?
Yeah, there's an application for everything, and I think if you go into your business with that mindset, like if you're trying to figure out how to do something, most likely there's going to be some application that's going to help you do whatever it is you're going to do. And I think like the last time I looked at the number of pieces of software that we're using, just like third-party applications, like whatever QuickBooks or SEO tools, we're probably using between 25 and 40, something like that. And it's purely just to save time. You know, it's like, I'd much rather pay this SaaS company, whatever, $50 a month or whatever it ends up being, to save a ton of mistakes, to fill some gap that we need filled, and that whose only job is to do that, you know? So it's using the third-party applications are huge. The other thing that I would say is especially for me as an analyst, the introduction of the big cloud data warehouses, like BigQuery, Redshift, and Snowflake. Those have allowed people to pipe tons and tons of data for really inexpensive cost per month. And what that allows you to do is do much better, more dynamic analysis. And so what we do with all of our clients is we pipe all their Google Analytics and Search Console and Ahrefs and crawl data and log files and all that into a database. And then we have built these tools that leverage those cloud data warehouses that save us a ton of time on the front end. So that originally, when I had started Assisted Reach, the first like year and a half, I still had my my last job. And the reason I was able to grow it to the point to where I had grown it to was because I had automated so much of the SEO process, leveraging these cloud data warehouses.
No, it's amazing. And people that are like scared, right, with technology because you grew up and you're in it. So it's a little bit different than someone that's an entrepreneur or business owner that they're not comfortable with technology, right? Let alone like, how does anything integrate? And what do you mean by saving me time? Like, I'd rather do the manual process, right? Like, what do you say on that front? Because there are still a lot of old school business owners that are very successful doing what they do because they've built it for so many years, right? What can you say on that front? Because I personally see it all the time, but it's hard because they are so their mindset is so instilled on like traditional versus like modern, or you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, totally. So I think, I mean, if I like the philosophy that glass is always broken. So even if something's working, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make it better, right? And so for those people that maybe don't have a technical background, there are really, really easy ways to find people who do have technical backgrounds. And as long as you ask the right questions, you can get things accomplished. Like I'm actually a perfect example of that. I wouldn't consider myself like a software developer, but I consider myself as more of like a data science. But a lot of the tools that we've built required like a software engineer or software developer skill set. And so what I do is I use Upwork, and I post a job for kind of what I'm looking for. Hey, I'm looking for a freelance software developer to help me with X, Y, or Z. And then what I do is I just make sure I'm asking really good questions, and I've got a really solid project description of what I want. And that usually does it, you know? So even if it's outside the bounds of your skill set, there are people that you can access through the internet and through sites like Upwork really easily, and they'd love to help you. And there's tons of them. So yeah, I would just say kind of branch out and kind of talk to the right people so that you can get a sense of like what could even be automated and that sort of thing.
That's amazing. Yeah, like I look at a lot of like traits like yourself and myself. We're open to freelancers and globalization and other opportunity because you're giving an opportunity for someone else in the third world or somewhere else in the world to, you know, bid on the job that you know you can't do it and you don't want to do it yourself, right? So you could pay someone to do it at a fraction of the cost. So you have to look at the positives as opposed to like, you know, doing things that is harming the economy, right? But also look at the best interest for yourself in the business, right? And what does it serve? So if you're really trying to fulfill a gap in the marketplace with a product or a service that you know a lot of people will benefit from, at least you're doing good, right? And you're growing the economy in that sense.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, like it honestly, it feels great when you're helping, even if they're not like W-2 employees that you see every day.
Yeah.
If you're helping people from other countries or even people in the States with freelance work, especially during the times that we're in, and you've got a business that's making money and you're able to help support other people, like that's amazing, you know?
No, that's one of the questions I'm going to ask you later on. But
Okay.
regarding like what drove you to become starting your own business? Like what was the point where it was like, okay, I've been working here for a while. What triggered you? Because, you know, as an entrepreneur, something must have hit you to a point where like, I can do something because there's a need or demand and I can profit from it, or people are willing to pay for it, right? Like where was that point in the journey to make you start something?
Yeah, I guess like to become an entrepreneur, like or wanting to start my own business, I think that was just kind of in me, you know?
Yeah.
But to start, like when I had first started Assisted Reach, the reason I had started it was because I had just done this for the Christmas light installation company that I had started. And we like the business did great our first year. We decided not to continue to do it. I did it with two of my buddies from college. But we decided not to continue doing it because it was a seasonal business. So we're only working on it 3 months out of the year. And then we're like, what are we going to do the other 9 months, you know? So then I thought like, well, out of this like whole experience, what I really enjoyed was like the building of something. And I really enjoyed the marketing. So using Google Ads and SEO to drive all the leads to the site. So that was kind of when the light bulb went off and I was like, hey, I could definitely do this for other companies. So that's how it started. Maybe that within 2 months, I talked to one of my buddies' stepdads who owned an insurance company, and they were our first client. So that's how it started. And that was before Assisted Reach was Assisted Reach. I think I'd gone through 2 other names before that, and yeah, I'm sure you know how it goes when you're first
Well,
starting.
yeah, I think name is not important. It's more like get your customers and get
Right.
people that are willing to even pay you, right? Because then that's how you know you're building something. But a lot of people go backwards. They spend so much time like delving into like the product or service without even knowing the client, right? And getting clients. So people kind of do the opposite, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So in terms of like, how did you get the name out there? Like, did you do a lot of networking at the beginning? Like, how did you grow and start that momentum?
Yeah, so for me, it was originally it was just kind of word of mouth. And then I started writing for Ahrefs.
Okay.
So once I started writing for Ahrefs, that kind of got me visibility into the SEO world, and I started getting more leads from that. And then because I saw what that was kind of doing for the business, I started guest posting more, and that's really
Nice.
what's been the main driver has of inbound leads has been through guest posting.
Yeah, so just so the audience members know, guest posting is contributing content that is rich and bringing value to other websites, right? So a lot of people don't understand what guest post is. Only people in our industry probably understand it.
Yeah, great point.
So as an entrepreneur, it's all about giving value, right? And the more you are in it for the right reasons, which is you're not there to sell your product or service, you're there to give criticism or input or value in sense of written format or images, video, or whatever it is. But you're guest posting, which is providing comment or article or blog on someone else's website, and you're giving information or value. And don't expect anything from it. Like, don't expect to get a backlink to follow with a high DA, trust flow, whatever. Really just do it for the purpose of like doing it as opposed to expecting something from it. Hopefully that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. For me, guest posting. So Ahrefs was a marketing blog who had a big audience of marketers, which is why that had worked for me. So the idea there is like you post on the blog and you do a really really good job and write a really comprehensive, essentially guide. Those are usually the ones that do the best in terms of like lead generation for yourself. But they should just be helpful. Teach someone how to do something, and then once they read that, a very small percentage of those people that end up reading it will be like, hey, like, even though this guide showed me how to do what it is, like, this is too complicated and more than I want to bite off. So I'm going to reach out to this person and ask them if I can hire them to do it. So that, I think that's like a really good way of thinking about guest posting, especially what you said, don't expect to get anything out of it. A very, very small percentage of people end up converting into a lead, and it really depends on what you write about. But if you make it a practice and you say, let's say you guest post once a month or something like that, eventually compound interest says that it'll eventually turn into a good lead funnel for yourself.
And a lot of people, like entrepreneurs and business owners, they're already busy, right? Running a business, and they forget about like giving. And the more you give, the more you're going to get in return, right? So they don't
Right.
see it as beneficial because it's not top line revenue that you see right away. So they'd rather spend money on ads on Facebook ads, Google ads, because they see immediate return. But it's all about the long game, right? It's like SEO. The more you position yourself as an expert, a leader in the industry, or something that you're giving, the better you're going to become over in the long term. Like, don't think short term. A lot of people forget about the difference between ads versus SEO. And of course, the whole funnel, right? The journey that people have to go through. So it's great that you're putting that into perspective, because a lot of people don't get it. And hopefully, as an entrepreneur, you kind of understand, like, you're in it for the long term. You're not just in it to sell your business within 1 or 2 years, right? You're probably in it for 5 or 10 or 15 years as an exit, right? Because this is your passion, purpose, and why you started in the first place.
Right.
So right now, like, what drives you? What's your motivation? Why are you doing what you're doing? And why are you in this cabin? Tell us a little bit more about this. What's going on here?
Yeah. So I think that was like a pretty big existential question that I was struggling to answer for myself for a while. It's like, why am I doing all this stuff? It seemed like it was just like this subconscious, like, driving force that I didn't really understand. So I think, like, that was, over the last few years, something I've been really like looking into, and being self-reflective and trying to understand, hey, like, what is it, or what is a philosophy I can apply to this drive that I have. And so where I've landed now, I'm not saying that this is going to be my answer in 5 years by any means, but I read, I can't remember where this is from, but it makes a really good case for becoming the best version of yourself and doing that every single day. And the reason you do that is because you can't help anyone unless you help yourself first. It's like the analogy when you get into an airplane, and they say, when the masks come down, put your mask on first before you put it on your child's. And so I'm a big believer in that. And so like what drives me, like, what's the point of anything? It's, I think, become the best version of yourself, so that rubs off on everyone and everything that you touch. So that could be business, that can be family and relationships. That can be like you're in a really great mood because you had a great day in business, and you're really nice to your mailman, and that in turn makes their day way better. And then, this compound snowballing effect that ends up bettering the world in some way, So I don't think it's like I'm not like shooting for one destination or one moment. It's really about just like, all right, how can I make myself the best possible human every day? Because I'm sure, or I'm kind of sure right now that ensures that I will do the most good in the world that I'm capable of providing,
That's awesome, man. It's inspiring too to hear, like, if you don't mind me asking, you're probably in your 30s, or?
I'm 27.
So 27-year-old talking about life lessons, embracing like the moment and being grateful. Like, I'm 39 right now, so I've lived a little bit longer than you, but hearing you be, just self-reflective and trying to take care of yourself. Like, I'm at a different stage in my life where I have a family, I have children and whatnot. Like, you might not at this moment, but taking care of yourself, and that's the number one thing that you can control. You can't control a lot of the other external factors, but at least you can do the best you can by reading up, watching, learning as much, making mistakes, running a business, things that you can control, right? Other thing externally, stuff that will happen, and hopefully that will get through and move on. But at least things that you can do is have the best product or service, take care of your staff, and have the best software for your clients and whatnot. Fill that gap, right, in need.
Yeah. I feel like you have to be to be able to do all that. You have to be the best version of yourself, And there's a great book. Me and my girlfriend absolutely love this book. It's called The Mastery of Love, and they essentially talk about this. Like, you're almost incapable of loving someone else unless you love yourself. And I think that same like kind of concept applies, and like to tie it into the cabin, that was that had a lot to do with like why I decided to buy the cabin that I'm currently living in Northern Arizona, in a very remote area. And it was like, I wanted to provide myself with more space, and time to think, and quiet without like, cause I moved from Austin, Texas. So I'm in the middle of a city, things are louder, and you don't get that time to really reflect on, what you learned this week, or what you learned today. And so a lot of the intention with moving out here is, to live more of a balanced life, to do kayaking and hiking, and not be so work centric, like have an allocated time for work every single day and do your absolute best. But balance your life, in a way that leaves you feeling refreshed to wake up the next day, rather than being exhausted and drinking 18 cups of coffee and, burning the candle at both ends of the stick.
It's amazing to hear. You're so much more mature than a lot of entrepreneurs, that have been through a lot of things, right? Like being able to understand what's important in your life, first and foremost, like self-reflecting and being grateful, right? And understanding like what really matters to you, right? Is who cares about everything else? Like just forget about what other people say, just take care of yourself, right?
Right.
And a lot of people are, and I think social media has played a detrimental role in a lot of aspects in life. But you have to understand like what their motivation is as a business, right? So us business owners, we get why they do certain things, but the consumers don't really understand. So I kind of, don't even look at my phone after 5 o'clock because it's me and my son time. And that's the most
Right.
important thing in the world to me. And therefore I'm present and I don't care if my phone rings or email goes off and, business related. It doesn't matter to me because that's where I focus on being present with my son. Right.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Business will come and go. Right. And hopefully, you take it for granted because you don't take it for granted because your son or your family will always be there. And if you forget and lose that focus, you're going to miss out on, the best years of your life, right? You're going to regret it. So you got to live, right? So I've learned that over the years as well. And I'm still learning because I get a lot of like inspirational stuff from a lot of business owners all the time. So for me, it's like learn as much as I can and do it, right? As opposed to say I'm going to do it, just do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Nike.
Exactly. So aside from business, what are some of the other pillars? Because I know you mentioned like giving, right? Is so inspirational for you. And you talked about health a lot and it sounds like your family is such a strong mode. So in terms of like what really are some of the major pillars in your life right now and where do you see yourself going the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, I hope to just keep getting better and better over the next 5 to 10 years at the balance between all the things that are important in my life. And for me, it's family, friends, which I'd classify under like relationships. I think business and personal kind of overlap, especially for entrepreneurs. And so I almost don't even look at them as separate things. Like, I almost look at them as one and the same. Like, am I enjoying what I'm doing on a day-to-day in business? That same principle should apply to my personal life. I should be doing things that I enjoy every day. I play. Play is a great word to sum it up. I think especially entrepreneurs, you get so heads down and focused on building what you're trying to build that you forget that you're doing it. Really the only thing you have, aside from some arbitrary goal that you have in your mind, is the day to day. And if it's not fun, then life is like, what's the point? Like if you're not having fun, why are you doing it? So I like to, especially we were talking about earlier, hiring people to do things you don't want to do. Like that's something I constantly have to have a pulse on. Am I enjoying what I'm working on every day? And if I'm not, I need to make a change. So that's an ongoing battle. And then obviously physical and mental health. So like I said, I played sports all growing up. Right now, I'm doing Muay Thai,
Nice.
which is like kickboxing. And then I was a big into jujitsu. I got a concussion at the beginning of the year, so I'm taking a little bit of a break from that. But my girlfriend and I, we do a Murph every weekend. We try and stay super active. We've been doing a 100-day yoga challenge. So always just kind of mixing it up. Once a workout gets boring, I start trying to do something else. And then mental health is just really, I think for me, it's just creating the space that I need to self-reflect. So for me, that's nightly baths. So I absolutely love taking a bath at night. And I just turn off all the lights, completely dark, no reading, no phone, no music, nothing. And just sit there for 20, 30 minutes. Don't even try and meditate, just sit. And you'll be really surprised at kind of the self-reflection that automatically happens while you're doing that. So yeah, and then for me, it's just really balancing all of those aspects. And I wouldn't say I'm good at it yet. I think I go through periods of time where the personal is, the personal / business is way more important. And I'm neglecting family and relationships or physical and mental health. And then sometimes the other levers start, I think it's mostly that. But yeah, I think my ultimate goal is to just get better at balancing all of those things, to live a smoother, less friction, or a more frictionless life.
And it sounds amazing because you are so light years ahead of me when I was 27 because I was still discovering myself. Right? So it seems like you got your footing right and you raised well and you at least have things in order. You have your business, things are going well, and you're able to like just, understand what's important and why you're doing certain things, right? The purpose of not just business, personal life, relationships, but everything, right? So it's great to hear. But that was amazing. I really appreciate your time, Cody. So where can some of the listeners get a hold of you, your business, reach you directly?
Yeah, so you can find, if you're interested in reading about technical marketing and SEO stuff, you could check out assistedreach.io. That's our website. You could go check out our blog. You can find me on Cody West SEO on Twitter. And I'd say those are probably the two best places to get a hold of me.
Perfect. And we'll add that on the show notes. But I really want to thank you for your time, Cody. I had a lot of fun getting to know you. And you provided some great insights and very inspiring for someone that's only 27 years old. So thanks a lot for your time. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I had a ton of fun, John. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Awesome. Thank you.